Hey y'all, it's Christina Barker, licensed clinical professional counselor, love and life coach. I have a passion for women, and today we'll be talking about emotions, something that women are known for having a lot of, right? But I want to talk to you about the different levels of emotion and the complexity of some of the emotions that you have. So, first of all, you have primary emotions and then secondary emotions. A primary emotion is the very first emotion you feel after something occurs. It's usually what we call a soft emotion. It's an emotion that is knee jerk. It's experience. We experience it at a very primal level, without a whole lot of thought that goes into it. And then after we have the primary emotion, we develop emotions about that emotion. And those are what we call our secondary emotions, which is typically where we spend most of our time. And so I'll give you an example. Our central nervous system's job is to carry information from our body senses and our senses, our what we hear, what we see, what we can feel, what we can smell, what we can taste, all of that sensory information to our mind to make sense of it, right? And we have our mind is comprised of three levels. We have the lower brainstem, which is the autonomic nervous system, or the autonomic response system or center. Then we have our limbic system, which is where our emotions are. And then we have our cerebral cortex, where we are doing our conscious thinking and our conscious reasoning and decision making. Well, when our body experiences something, we automatically respond. Um, in our physical body, and it carries information to make us have a certain feeling, right? So for example, let's say a truck is or a train is racing towards you and you're on the track. Well, your autonomic nervous system will hear that horn going off, and it'll say run, right? You won't have a whole lot of thought that goes into it. Your adrenaline will get to flowing, and you'll get to getting out of dodge, because you recognize that fear is actually leading you to respond quickly. The fear of the imminent danger that you're in, right? When you step off of the track and you, let's say the train misses you just closely, then the immediate feeling might be relief. That's your primary feeling. Your primary emotion is a fear. First you felt fear, then you felt relief. Now, as you develop feelings about the feeling of relief, you may end up feeling something else. You may end up feeling angry because you're thinking about the fact that the train was moving so fast and made you feel afraid. You may develop feelings about the fact that you have to walk that route, and you now are upset that you even have to come into contact with such a dangerous situation where you have to cross a track and you have to run for your life. And so now you're feeling anger. The primary emotions came without thought, but the secondary emotions came after thinking. Now, how does this look in relationships? How does this look in your marriage? How does some of these tendencies to go from what we initially feel into thinking about them in a certain way and then feeling something else play out from childhood and create patterns of emoting, right? So let's just say you're a child and you happen to live with your mom, but your dad is sort of a in and out of your life, and you really want a relationship with him, and he calls and says he's going to come get you and you're going to spend this great weekend doing fun things, and you're all ready to go. You're excited, you're happy, and you go and you sit out on the porch, right? And you're waiting, and he says he's going to show up at a certain time. Let's say that time is 12 noon, and you're waiting, and 12 noon comes, and you look at the clock and you notice, wait a minute, 12 noon's here, daddy's not here. Now you're looking and you're getting a little anxious, right? Like, where's daddy? 5 minutes go by, 10 minutes go by, half hour goes by, and all of a sudden that excitement starts to fade, right? And now the feeling is worry or even disappointment when you come to realize daddy's not coming. Daddy's not going to show up like he said. So now you have a new emotion, disappointment. Well, if you experience enough disappointment, you will actually bypass the feelings of sadness and disappointment that you feel and go straight into a more what we call a secondary emotion, like resentment. I resent daddy for even getting my hopes up. I resent daddy for even making me want him in my life. And so now when daddy does show up, you're giving him the cold shoulder. You're really not able to give him the excitement that you once were giving him because you've thought about it, and for survival's sake, your defense mechanisms are telling you, don't get your hopes up, don't get excited, don't let him in, because you know what happened, you know how you felt before when he let you down. Give you another example. The thing about our central nervous system is that its job is to keep us alive, to keep us aware so that we don't experience trauma in a brand new way that makes us feel vulnerable. And so a lot of times our primary emotions are very vulnerable emotions. We're open to all of these things that could possibly happen. And so we're open to hope and joy and excitement. But then life happens and cuts that hope off and cuts that joy and that excitement off. And your central nervous system carries information that basically says, don't get your hopes up. Don't get too excited. You know disappointment can happen. And so our primary emotions tend to be the soft emotions that keep us open and vulnerable. But if we experience enough trauma, enough disappointment, enough conflicting information that makes us regret those open, vulnerable feelings, then we can develop a hard shell to protect our hearts and to protect ourselves from feeling the disappointment, feeling the sadness, feeling the discouragement, feeling the fear. And now we feel a stronger emotion that allows us to feel back in power again. An emotion like anger or rage or resentment or regret or disapproval, right? So if you think about your relationship with your husband, has he disappointed you? Has he let you down? Is talking to him challenging and you feel like you just never get anywhere in your conversations? Have you developed a cold shoulder towards him? Are you living in a space of secondary emotions where your experiences with him have taught you to protect yourself, to put your guard up, to put your boundaries around your heart? Even though that's natural and it's normal, it can lead to dysfunction. It can impede the ability to have an intimate quality relationship. And so what you have to do is you have to, maybe even with coaching or counseling, you have to get to a place where you can unpack the primary emotions that you may have long since even forgotten existed. You may no longer even realize that what is beneath that anger or that resentment or that disappointment is actually sadness, fear, loneliness. So here's the thing. You have to deal with the primary emotions in order to stop being controlled by the secondary emotions. We do that through counseling by discovering what's really behind this cold shoulder. What's really behind this resentment? What happened that made you feel discouraged? What happened that made you shut down emotionally? It may have happened in the relationship itself, or it may have happened in childhood through your experiences. Your central nervous system actually stores information of trauma. And we have two different levels of trauma as well. You have the big T trauma, which is pretty much the stuff that everybody understands is trauma. Stuff like you've been assaulted, you've been violated, you have experienced war, you've experienced severe extreme poverty, abuse of some sort, domestic violence. Those are big T traumas that everybody expects you to be traumatized by, you to have been hurt by, harmed by, maybe even permanently have some PTSD from, post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms from. And then you have small T trauma, which is actually every one of us has experienced small T trauma. Small T trauma are the small slights, that add up and make us not trust the world we live in. It's the friend moving away and then falling out of touch. And you wonder, were we ever really friends? It's the loss of a job, the death of a dog, the honestly, anything that we go through that we feel like was a disappointment or hurt us in some way emotionally, made us feel sad or afraid or insecure. We can call those small t traumas. Even being sick for a period of time and not necessarily knowing if you were going to recover. COVID, where many of us experienced COVID or watched someone that we love experience COVID. And that could be a small t trauma. If they actually did succumb and pass away, that could be considered a big T trauma, right? Trauma teaches us to protect ourselves. We go through certain experiences, go through certain pain, and our knee-jerk response to that pain is, I never want to feel that pain again. And so what we do is develop coping mechanisms, also defense mechanisms to keep ourselves safe, to keep ourselves protected. And so as we're born into the world, we're fearless. Right? We touch things we shouldn't touch, and someone else has to look out for us and say, don't touch that. Don't go too close to the street. Be safe, because they understand that the world may not be the most safe place. As a child, as an infant, as a toddler, as a preschooler, you don't know that the world's not a safe place. Of course, unless you've experienced severe trauma in that stage of life. You don't know. And so you have an open heart and open mind. But as life tends to happen, you take in this information, and it becomes information you then put to use and start creating safety for yourself. And this safety can look like defense mechanisms and coping skills. So instead of someone yelling, getting you really upset and riled up, your defense mechanism is to just sort of dissociate. Dissociation looks like, I tune it out. I tune it out and I mentally go somewhere else, even though I'm physically here. Defense mechanism, the reason for that is, once upon a time, someone yelling actually severely impacted you. And your mind didn't like that feeling. So you developed the ability to not experience that feeling again. And so a lot of times we'll say people are emotionally unavailable. Sometimes they're emotionally unavailable because they have so much trauma in their life, or so many experiences where they've had to desensitize themselves for their own sanity's sake, for their own peace sake. And now they over practice this skill of desensitizing themselves to the trauma, to anything that makes them feel unsafe or afraid, that now it's showing up at times when it's not appropriate. And so they have to learn how to get back in touch with those feelings, right? So that's just a really quick lesson on how primary emotions and secondary emotions work. And if you want to learn more about it, there's a quick Google search will teach you about primary and secondary emotions, but I'd love to elaborate. So definitely please put your questions and your comments in the comments section. And on another note, if you are a married mom of multiple children, multiple minors, please join us over at Facebook, where I go live every Monday at 8, talking about all things related to being a wife and being a mom to multiple minors. So the title of the group is Married Mom of Multiple Minors. We go live at 8 on Mondays. I hope to see you there. God bless.